pals. Hi, welcome to Yankee. We have a big project to do today. I'll just try to explain what we're working on so you can join me, okay? See that big thing? It's called a dolphin. It's a type of fendering for the ship. It keeps the ship off the pier. But it broke loose from the other dolphin that's way up there. And I need to bring the two dolphins together so that they act as one as the winds change and as the tides change. So it's going to be tricky. The idea of hard work on a gnawing, nagging, every day, every hour, no matter what the weather, no matter how cold. I see what it's like to be a boy. When there are boys around in the family or on the ship, when you're growing up, for instance, they get the most of the hard outdoor jobs, and the girls do a lot of hard work too. But sometimes I think it's easier being a girl because the boys get used up more. But it's funny because it makes me understand why boys will get so rough and tumble and just screaming and yelling and just, I don't know, acting like monkeys. And I realize why when I'm the only one that can do some of these hard things right now. And the boat boy girl we have is so precious. She's actually very mighty, but she's tiny and inexperienced. So and language is sometimes tricky, not knowing all the terms. So it's sometimes tricky to communicate, but not so bad. She's so sharp and delightful. But when I'd see my brothers, just wild and carrying on, I can see, or just think of men, singing shanties or, just being uproarious in some way. I understand that because it's something that it keeps you having courage when you're working. In this video, it looks like nothing's happening, and yet between me and the sea and the dolphins and the steel and the cold, icy water, there's a lot of balancing going on. My shoes and my coat and my knees were constantly actually soaking up water like a wick through my trousers and my long underwear and wicking up the water so no one would be able to see, but actually I was quite wet. And then, just when I put my arm down in that freezing water, oh my goodness, it feels so awful with the water just crawling up your arm, and then your arm is really cold that you can't really see. You can't see the cold, so it's hard to understand what it's like. And also not really knowing how I was going to get this to happen, but it all worked out so beautifully. I was so grateful. I had a lot more hardware that Frederick had helped me figure out when by phone to know exactly what pieces to use, what kinds of hitches, how to get this whole thing to connect together. The plan was much more complicated because we didn't know that we would be able to find the holes in those flanges. We thought we would have to somehow get the cable to wrap around the flanges and then go through some kind of a hitch and then hitch the two dolphins together, but it actually didn't have to happen that way. It was much easier. So I was so relieved. But I was thinking about this idea of hard work too. There's a beautiful few words written by Mary Baker Eddy, which come to me often when I think I just can't endure. Now, this was much easier than many things, many things that will never be able to be shared by a video, because either the weather is so storming that you can't have a phone out there, or there's nobody to film, or it's so hard that it's all hands on deck. And even if there are other people working, it just has to happen, and nobody knows. But these words keep coming to me from Mary Baker Eddy, a woman from 30 years ago or so, she said, whatever it is your duty to do, you can do without harm to yourself. Whatever it is your duty to do, you can do without harm to yourself. I just cherish those sometimes, and they get me through some of the most ridiculous debacles. So, and I just think, what does that? Why? What is that? Well, it's that self is something that we think about, but everything is actually happening in a kind of divine intelligence and a movement like nature, really, like a tree bending in the wind, or amazing things happening in nature, or with animals. They're out doing their work no matter what, and they're not thinking of the body. And so if you lift your thought above this material kind of organization and realize that movement and activity and strength and wisdom, intelligence, grace, all those qualities are working together from a divine dimension. And we are part of that movement. But the strength isn't from us. The strength is from the forces of thought, not human will or mind over matter as a human kind of thinking and struggling from the brain to the body. No, it's so much more graceful than that, and so much more loving, and so much more liberating. And once you're involved in the work, you don't even feel the body. It's just a tool, no different than a wrench. It's just such a graceful ballet happening all the time, weaving through thought and beauty and everything around us. It's such an adventure, really, because you become rather outside the body, and the body has no voice. It's only matter. When I was a little girl, I was a swimmer I was actually in the Junior Olympics and training for the Olympics. And really my whole life was in the water. Now, we lived in California, and many people from other parts of the world think that California has warm weather or gentle weather year-round. But it's not so in Northern California. First of all, there's just a narrow passage, really, where there's any gentleness. And in the winter, it's still cold. And the thing is, it wasn't freezing weather. So the pools weren't heated. And the pools weren't indoors. There were I'd never heard of an indoor pool. Well, actually I had when I was way tiny, living in San Francisco. There was a great big old bathing house where everything was tile. So I loved to yell and sing because the whole place was like a giant echo chamber. But as I was living out in the country with my family, there were no indoor pools. So I had to go and work out by myself in the early morning before school every day. And then after school, I had to work out in the dark. When the winter was on, it was dark early. And, it was such a hard life. I had to pedal my bike on a narrow dirt path that was not much wider than the wheels of my bike, the tires of my bike. And in those days, they didn't have outdoor clothing that was really very practical. I used to wear a sweatsuit that was way too big for me, and it was gray. There wasn't any other color. And I had to tie with rope my cuffs up so that they didn't get caught in my chains of my bike. And everything about it was too big. It was probably for grown-ups or something. I don't know where it came from, but I would just bundle myself up in that with my school clothes on underneath it. My dress would be inside my trousers of my sweatsuit. And then I would just pedal early in the morning all the way to the pool and climb up this tall, steep cliff, dragging my bike up the path. And I'd get there, and I had to get the courage to dive in. And I'd get up on the starting block and just go, hold my breath and just go. And I would just start doing laps, just lap after lap after lap, and spin and push off and lap all the way to the end, pulling my arms through, kicking, pulling, breathing, trying to find the balance that would move my body through the water and rock and push and move and move. I think of myself as a fish slithering, moving forward, always, and then twirling and pushing off. And pretty soon, I didn't really feel the temperature of the water. At first, it was burning cold, but eventually, it just became part of me. I just sort of soaked it up and just kept going. And coming out of the water in the winter was actually not as bad as coming out of the cold water in the summer, because, wait, how did that work? Actually, no, there was something about the water and the air had a kind of gentle relationship. So if there wasn't a wind, it didn't feel shocking, as shocking, I guess. I'm not quite sure how it worked, but I remember feeling, I guess it's because the water was feeling colder when it was a warm day in a way. But what I'm telling you this story for is just to realize that, we can do fabulous things, and if we don't think about what we don't want to do, if we think the job needs to get done, the work has to happen, and so we just put self aside. Self is like a wedge that breaks us apart from our relationship with our duty. And it's really the hardest and most pernicious and biggest thing to fight against sometimes than the physical conditions. So when we can let go of self-consciousness and have a bigger consciousness and let the mission just ring before us like bells, it just helps everything move forward. I love that feeling when I am not in the way of the work. Isn't that great? I think a lot of people think that the body is working, but it's really the thought that lets go of the body that releases us to do things that break records. And it's a really, it's a great realization when it happens.